So like what's one of the major things that you find people don't understand but don't necessarily anticipate when they're looking at new construction?
I think I would say it's probably the deposit and how it's structured. Every builder is different, but most of them are all almost at the same level of playing field when it comes to how much money you got to put down. And it's always 10% of the purchase price. The difference comes is how they want that 10%. Some will want it all at once. Some will say 4 months or 4 equal payments, 5 equal payments broken down into 30, 60, 90, 120 days. And again, that's all based on your closing date. So if it's a long closing date from a year to 2 years, that deposit would probably be stretched out longer just to accommodate obviously the amount. If you're buying something for $1 million, 10%, that's a lot of money to be putting down. Mm-hmm. So the longer the stretch it is more obviously beneficial. But again, it all depends. But rule of thumb is 10%. Of the purchase price.
And I think that's a key too, because and one thing to note that money that you're putting down does go towards your overall down payment, so you don't have to come up with your down payment on top of that. And like the interesting thing you said, it's not due all at once. So if you don't have the money yet, but you know you're going to have it in 4 months, that might be good to kind of plan that, okay, I need to come up with this. I don't just have to write a check today for like $100K.
Yeah, what we've seen is a lot of people, if they have a house to sell, they typically will refinance that and pull the equity out and use it for the down payment because it is a large amount of money. Obviously, the first one is always due at signing, so you can't sign any paperwork without putting a consideration down, which is the money. So make sure you at least have 10 to 20,000 sitting around to put down for the first one, and then the rest of them are all post-dated checks. So again, another thing you need to have are checks. So that's another big thing that people forget. They come into the office or to the sales office, they don't have checks. You could get parents to sign for you or bring checks on your behalf until you get checks and swap them out. Again, every builder is different, but the one we work with typically allows you to swap the checks before the next payment. So you could also do a bank draft. They're never gonna say no.
The checks
you just gotta figure out how to get the money.
The check. You know what? I don't even think I had a checkbook until my first purchase was a new build, and I think I actually went and got a checkbook because of that purchase. Yeah. Because I had to write the checks. That's hilarious when you think about it. Because we don't. I mean, if you're not really like in business or anything,
what do you need checks for?
Have a checkbook, especially our generation.
But if you want to be an investor, you got to have checks.
You got to get it ready, eh? And I know another thing that you had mentioned to me previously was the closing dates, because you get that carry-on form.
Yep.
On closing, and you see like 4 or 5 different dates on that paperwork. Can you break down sort of what to look for when you're looking at those dates, or what they mean?
Yeah. So every obviously project site, there's already preset dates. The way Terrion breaks it out, when you have that first page where it has there's probably 10 dates. The first one is your tentative date. That's not a firm date. That's not the actual closing date, but that's the date that the builder will go off of. So when you're outside of that 90-day window, the builder could delay you up to 120 days. So what that second date is, that's the 120 days that they do delay you with, and then so on and so forth. So there'll be 3 to 4 of those type of dates. Now, below those dates, there's another set of dates. This is where it gets confusing, because people are like, well, what are these dates? So those dates are the dates that if that date passes, the first date becomes firm and binding. So you don't need to contact your builder or the sales rep to say, hey, is this firm? Am I closing on this date? What's going on? The second it passes, it's automatically firm and binding. Your banker should know, your lawyers will know, everybody will know. So if you got delayed to the second date, then that second part is the same thing. If that date passes, that second date becomes firm and binding. So that's kind of how you have to go about it. And we always try to help people and try to, address those concerns, because it is confusing. A lot of people don't know, and they see 100 dates. They don't know which one's their date.
Yeah, exactly. And then a lot of times the builder, I don't know if it's a legal thing or just a courtesy, but I know generally they have to give you at least 90-day notice if they're planning to go from that first tentative date to the next one. Like if they're planning to move down, they have to give you some notification that they are extending it. I guess by that date on the bottom half, right?
Absolutely. I mean, again, nothing's in our control. COVID happens, multiple different things happen, strikes happen on site. When you have 2 years, 3 years away closing dates, anything can happen, especially in the construction world. So if they might be closer to that 90-day when they delay you, and I get it. Everybody gets upset because you're planning and you want to either sell a house, you need to get your financing all locked in, you got to get all that stuff done. So it does make it very difficult to plan, but at the same time, the builder's trying to do the best that he can to meet those deadlines as well, right? They're mass productions, so.
Yeah, and I mean, you're saying that, like, you touched on a couple things that I know when you were talking about first getting the checks to the deposit. My first new build I actually bought with a refinance. I pulled equity out to purchase it. So that's a good option for people that if you think how are you going to get the money to purchase a new build, that's one way to do it if you have equity in your current home. And then another, when you're talking about trying to line up the closing date, I actually had it happen to me where I sold my place because I didn't want to, I thought it was going to close my townhouse out on the Stony Creek Mountain. I sold my place and then that got pushed 3 months. So we just ended up moving in with my mom for 3 months. Which, I mean,
Free
it wasn't
rent.
the worst thing. Yeah, it was pretty good. I liked having my laundry done again for me, so that was nice. But that, and then one other thing that I think is a huge expense that people don't anticipate with new construction is all the additional costs, because the additional costs with the new construction are actually, usually they're a lot bigger than just a regular resale property.
Right, yep. So a lot of times people aren't aware of those extra costs. Again, every builder is different, but majority of them either do one or two things. They either cap your levies, your utilities. Utilities are your hydro, your water connections to the house, cable connections to the house. So some builders will cap those at a cost. They'll say $10,000 for everything. If it goes over that, you only pay $10,000. If it's less than that, you only pay what that cost was. Some builders leave it open. If when you initially come to sign a contract, you always get 2 weeks for lawyer review and mortgage approval. So during those 2 weeks, you must do your mortgage approval so you could get that pre-approval letter or the firm approval letter to lock in those rates, obviously because the rates have gone up. Mm-hmm. So you want to lock in those low rates. And secondary, it's the lawyer review, because the lawyer review will look at the paperwork and find those costs. If those costs are high or if they're not capped, he's going to go out of his way and make sure they're capped. Or he's going to advise you of what you're buying and what you're moving into. We try to educate as much of the purchasers when they come into the sales office to understand what they're buying. But the second they leave that door, typically I've noticed they usually forget. Yeah. And then they forget to send it to the lawyer, or their lawyer's not in town, or they're out on vacation, whatever the case is. But it's very, very important for you, especially if it's your first time buying something that you're not aware of, those extra costs. And they could rack up. They could. If a levy pops up, that could be $5,000 to $10,000. And if it's not capped, that's coming out of your pockets. And you only see those costs at end of closing. You don't see them before closings, because you don't know, the builder doesn't even know till that time. Yeah. And they're about to build the house. So you just want to be prepared, and you want to have the most knowledge, knowing what you're buying and what you're going into. You know, new construction is completely different than resale, but if you're educated enough to understand what you're about to buy, it's a smooth transition.
Yeah, and that's it. I think a lot of people get super overwhelmed when it comes to new construction. Like you said, you forget to send it to the lawyer or your broker because you're just not...
You're excited.
You're excited. You just signed literally the biggest contract of your life. Like, those things are how many pages? 50 pages, 60 pages?
They could be 100, yeah.
Yeah, compared to a regular
and it's not built.
Resale.
You're just buying land.
You're trying to pick out your floor plan. You're wondering which way the island's going to go, right?
Yeah.
Then you got to pick your lot. Oh, am I going to have a lot that has like a grate in the back? Or so you're trying to... And then by the time you're all done, you walk out of there, you need a nap. I feel like it's exhausting.
Oh, and sometimes the way the floor plan is, then it's built and it's flipped.
It's flipped, yeah.
And then you're like, wait, no, the kitchen's supposed to be on this side. It's like...
That was my first house. We spent 2 years looking at the one floor plan. And then and we knew it was going to be flipped. But when we moved in, it was weird. Because we've been anticipating, even though we knew it was flipped. Our mind, visually, we were looking at it.
We get that, and then we get the garages. When the garage and the front door are flipped, everybody's assuming it's on this side, and I guess it all has to do with the north, the south, the west, the east, the way the sun hits, and whether you want it in your backyard. So it's just being mindful of all those little things with construction.
We could do a whole episode just on
all
how
of
to
that.
pick a good lot layout. That's pretty important for resale, right? I think a lot of people don't think about it.
Walkouts, extreme lookouts, like there's so multiple of different grading. I mean, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that again in another episode. But I like it. But let's we'll stick to this. But if you guys got questions about purchasing new construction, reach out to us. I mean, Dan is like an expert on this topic on the team, so more than happy to help you. If you have any questions at all, just drop a comment below, and we'd love to help you out.
Take it down.